Welcome to Punch Keys Podcast. I'm Poppy Minix, your co-host, bringing you blunt talk for the fiction novelist.
And I'm Cascade, your other writerly co-host. If you love to ramble about writing and need a tribe, you found us.
Are you ready? We're uncorking now. Let's talk about punching those keys.
Oh my goodness, it's that time!
It is that time, and I'm so excited.
I am too. I'm really pumped for tonight. Welcome to Punch Keys. We are here to babble to you about writing, and I am a solid half a bottle in. You're welcome.
I am a good glass. I have about a fourth of my glass left, so I am warm and fuzzy.
Poppy is our designated driver for this conversation.
Uh-oh.
Welcome. We hope you're doing great. We hope you're punching the keys. Tonight we are talking about that sweet, sweet detail spot.
Yes.
Bring in the details. Details are great. We talked a lot about details and researched it, and there was one point where Bobby was talking to me about how a scene and introducing a character into a scene and what they noticed and the details they noticed and what were revealed about the character, and we're going to get into all of that. But as she was talking to me about it, I was like, holy crap, she is describing how to show versus tell. If you have not heard this phrase yet, well, welcome to, like, the bane of existence for half of writers.
Oh my God, is that ever the truth?
Show versus tell. So fun.
Woo! Or something.
All right. Poppy, what is show versus tell?
Oh, man. Show versus tell. Okay, so you're going to hear this term like an absolute ton, and it's just one of those writer things. They're going to tell you to do it. They're going to tell you not to do it. They're going to tell you to kind of do it. And it's what works.
Like all writing advice. Don't do it. Do it all the time. Do it sometimes. Now don't do it.
You're welcome. I know that is so clear. It's
we feel you guys. We feel
gosh. So when you're showing something, you're running the character through sensory details and actions that are happening without being like, I walked across the street. Instead, it is, the pavement was scorching on thin shoes. So the show is going to tell you more about the character. It's going to tell you more about the world, and it's going to tell you about the weather and the scents and everything else. Whereas tell, you're just
immersive experience.
It
immerses
immersive.
The reader into the scene and the experience the point of view character is having.
Absolutely. And that's really, that's writer goals right there. But you can't show everything all the time either, because then it would just be the longest work ever, ever, ever. Sometimes you need to just be like, they ran across the street, because now is like this moment where they just needed to get across the street. It has nothing to do with the plot. They don't need to know that there's 45 cars to the right and every single thing, but you still want to immerse them into a real life situation, because when you're reading, you want to fall literally into a book. The idea when you're reading is to, yes, you want the story, obviously. Yes, you want the character emotions, obviously. But you want to actually plop down into the scenery and to the same place, into your character's brain, and see what they're seeing and observe it and think about it and have this full immersive reading experience, to where when you come out of your chapter, it's almost like coming out of a meditative moment of being plopped back into your body. That is the goal right there.
And I really think the details were the bread and butter. And I really like the example you had about how you can be crossing the street and you can totally feel the heat from the pavement coming from your shoes. You can notice all the cars, the style they are, versus if you're in a action sequence and it's a high-speed pace. So your pacing's faster. You don't have time to notice all those things. But there are details that you pick up. There is the blur of certain colors, there's the certain smells or sounds, and the fact that they're crisp, fast details and what those details are. A blur of a red vehicle versus a red beetle bug with restored tire rims.
Right? Yeah.
Tells you the mind state of the character, right? Tells you the pace they're going at, tells you how concerned they are with the other things, with how much time they put on that, with how much the character notices. It's the bread and butter of the show versus tell. And it doesn't mean that you have to show every single thing, like you're saying.
Gosh, no.
It depends on what's relevant for your scene.
Yeah.
But regardless, when you're walking across the street, you need a detail. How many details and what kind of details can vary depending on the type of scene and the pacing you're going through it.
Yeah.
But you need a detail. I ran across the street. I walked across the street. Both of those are really boring. They both get
Right.
more interesting with how little they notice because they're running or how much they notice because they're walking.
Right.
That detail all of a sudden puts the reader in the scene.
Yes.
And, all right, so we have like a big caveat here for you guys. We have a big if and but or maybe, sorta, maybe.
Yeah, this has been like a big discussion of like how much detail do you do? Well, what do you do, Cass?
You have to sit back and look at your genre and your demographic. And we're looking at doing a whole episode on genre expectations because they matter. And it's also another controversial topic, just like show versus tell. People get so up in arms about it. But you have to know what your genre is because your genre is going to tell you what your demographic is. And your demographic is going to tell you what kind of details that you need to put in here.
Yeah.
So details for sci-fi is they're going to want so much more details on the spaceship. Details for fantasy, they're going to want so much more details on the magic system and how it works. Details for romance, they're going to want to know what their beautiful
Emotion.
smile or eyes look like.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for horror, I mean, we need to see the blood spatter on the wall, right?
Clearly.
So the type of details and what you focus on and what your reader is hungry for, it really does matter for your genre, which reveals your demographic. So everything we say here on out, it may fit for you, it may not. We're going to try and do most genres and demographics, talking about them as a whole, talking about things that are universal through all. But we are just muddling through this with you guys. So
it's just
always research your genre on your own and find out those expectations.
Absolutely. We got to talking about details, and we've talked about details a whole bunch through our past episodes, like world building and character development and repetition. We've talked about putting in details. And then we started on this conversation of, wow, well, you know, like with genre details, like you wouldn't do the same amount of details as you would for a children's or middle grade book as you would an adult or YA book. And they would be different details. And you have to think about the details that come from your character. You have to think about the details. We were having like a little mini argument over like, well, I'm thinking it's the character that's the main part of why you detail. And Kaz is like, no, it's the world building. And I think it's both. I think it's the in between.
Which is why we're going to talk about character detailing and world building detailing.
Right? Because, yeah, both of those things are just so important. And you can debate with us as to whether or not.
And I am all for character detailing. I am character utmost and foremost.
Yes.
But guys, that fantasy thread of me runs deep. I love me some world building and magic.
Right.
Yep.
That's true.
Okay, so let's just dive into some character detailing. So when you're looking at detailing out a character, what does that mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Well, when you're detailing out a character, I know, right? One, if you've listened to our character episode, you know, you're talking about building a person, because when you're reading, the idea is to make what you're writing as real as absolutely possible, which means you need to make a real person, and that real person has details, and the details of what they observe in the world around themselves, the emotion about themselves, about other people, about the entire world that they are living in is what matters to them, because they are a real human. They have wandered through life and found their own hobbies and their own life. They've had their own experiences. When you're talking about character details and you're talking about what they see is what's most important to them. Do they see specific cars because that's what their grandfather had? Do they don't like men because they had horrible experiences with men as they were younger? Do they love dogs because that was their best friend for 12 years as they were growing up? What's the history and the backstory of your person and what matters to them most? Because that is what the details are going to see. Whereas I would walk into a room and I would see specific things. If Cass walked into a room, she would see completely different things. And as for detailing, when you read something that sticks with you, if you think about those books that left a mark, that really stuck with you, you think about the details of it. It wasn't that the person smiled or the person walked into a room or the person was speaking to somebody. What are the details about the people that they're speaking to? What is the quirky, interesting thing that makes it different? What is it in the house that is their just mind and eyes are adhering to because they have to know what the heck that thing is. It is just these little quirky real life details that immerse you into a scene and make it where if you were to walk into somebody's home that you've never been before, you wouldn't just walk into a room, walk across, sit on a couch, have a conversation. You would be like, oh my God, this is somebody's home. Holy moly. Their couches are leather. It's a very sleek design. It's a super shiny floor. They must be very clean. You make
and be
observations.
Careful with your adjectives that they are adjectives that your character would use and not you.
Yes.
So be really careful with that. And I really like the concept of relevant details. You walk into a room and I walk into a room. We both stop and we see different things within the room.
Yeah.
And understanding what the character sees in the room is understanding what their hobbies are, what they do in their downtime, their childhood. These are the things that are going to help you realize what they notice. I have an example about clothing that I want to bring up.
Oh, okay.
So I think when you're talking about romance, like the smile, the eyes, and what they're wearing, it's kind of like the three big things that we talk about.
Gosh,
it's probably throwaway or whatever. I don't think it's always throwaway. And I want to bring that up because... Gosh, I'm trying to think of how I want to hit this. So Neil Gaiman does the masterclass series. I don't know if anyone has listened to the masterclasses. I love them. I'll probably bring up
I have.
ones.
They're amazing. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. And he talks in that one specifically about unique hats as a character description. Like one thing that really, and I think of this, Laurel K. Hamilton wrote the Anita Blake series. And I can't think of this series without picturing her vampire dude in lace cuff shirts.
Absolutely, 100%.
And sure, it's like this weird thing and it seems dated, but he's from a time when they were around. And every time I hear her name in that series, I think of her male vampire in lace cuff shirts, like the big flamboyant ones, because he was a very dramatic character. And so I think sometimes that goes back to knowing your genre too. And it's okay if it is something cheesy like...
it was her character's reaction as too. I mean, you have to think about it as her emotional reaction.
Detail.
It was very unique, and it was her
detail on a staple, overplayed descriptor
it was like
for
totally
the genre.
Poking fun.
I still see it every time I hear her name.
Yes,
and it's okay to do that. You don't have to avoid the staple descriptions of your genre. Sometimes poke at them. Sometimes find a unique detail within that.
Yes.
Oh, they like smiles? Cool. What if they have a big smile and there's a gap between their two bottom teeth?
Yes, a big one. A really big one.
Yeah. Like, oh, wait, I didn't see that coming, and I'm going to think of that now all the time.
Exactly. It's like those unique, very humanistic qualities because people are not perfect and people don't just smile. How is it? How does it light up the world? How does it make you feel? What is it compared to? There's been some very interesting comparisons and being able to show what your character feels and their life experience and the history and the time of when the story has been done.
Well, so let's go back to the Laurel K. Hamilton. She could have just told us that he's from whatever era.
Exactly.
And he liked dramatic clothing.
Right.
Instead... she showed us.
She did.
She gave a very specific detail to a clothing, and now I see it, and I always see it.
Absolutely. You can't unsee that. It's fantastic. And just her reaction, it's almost like a roast because of, a roasting words of being like, oh, seriously, man. It was just so sarcastically perfect. It was her reaction of it. You knew so much about her and about him at the same time, and this relationship that they pull and tug at each other. It was awesome. Like, that was really, really well done. I agree.
So when we're talking about relevant and show versus tell, make sure your details are showing things the reader needs to know. Mm-hmm. We kind of talked about in the episode where we were talking about layering scenes. You can layer details in the same way.
Yes.
And make sure the details you're giving are helping teach them something about the character, an attribute they have, a belief they have, an opinion they have, something they notice. Make that so it helps them see the character more. So like in this particular situation, we understand a whole bunch of backstory about this vampire character, all because of the stained lace shirt. That's fabulous show versus tell, and that's a detail attribute to close. There's so much more you can do with details in, I totally you're going to shoot me for this one. And so I'm thinking of my example with smiles.
Yes.
And the gap teeth, and I may have been a dental assistant for a few years. And so I'm thinking of all of the details you can give about someone's basic teeth care and hygiene and upbringing and social economic situation by the state of their teeth.
Right. And you probably don't even use common terms that I would typically use. You might even use technical dentistry terms. Whereas I would be like, oh, they have teeth. You'd be like, no, but the incisors are at a blah, blah % tilt. And I wouldn't understand that at all.
I may totally notice if someone has plaque on their teeth when I'm talking to them. Maybe.
Right?
That might
like you need a
happen.
Scraping about 2 months ago.
Or you just need to angle your toothbrush. Can I show you a better way to brush your teeth? No, that does not cross my mind. Nope. I don't know what you're talking about.
But that is also the joy of writing, because somebody can sit inside your head and hear that along and go, that's fun. You know, like that is.
And then they were like, I need to go brush my teeth just in case anyone around me does that.
Yes.
All of the dental people in your life are doing that to you, I promise.
That is really good to know, actually. So thank you for sharing that public service announcement from Casts.
Yeah, that happened. And again, like Poppy said, if you were in my head, you just learned a whole crap ton about me.
Oh, yeah.
When I'm seeing a smile and I'm judging their plaque level, I'm judging the color of their gums, everything going on, you're like, oh, she actually understands teeth and was in that for a while.
Exactly. And you get that in such a more visceral moment than if it was like, I used to be a dental assistant. You know, like that's the complete tell versus show. It's like you just know that they were clearly in the dental industry as opposed to just saying, I was in the dental industry. And it's just such a difference in your detailing between then you feel it, like you fall into it. And I feel like sometimes it is one of those moments when you reread. This doesn't always happen in your first draft. This can happen like second, third, fourth. When you're rereading your work and when you're looking at stuff and as you're going through and you're trying to read it as a reader would, not necessarily as you, the author, would, it's very interesting to try to fall into that pattern of just observing and kind of seeing what pops you out of the POV and what throws you deep into it to where you're so sucked in you literally can't pull away. But then the moment that somebody tells something that you should show, it's almost like this, whoop, I just got thrown out of a body. Okay, wait, I'm now outside the body and I'm being told what's happening like a narrator would. And
I think a lot of times that happens when you're trying to shove an irrelevant detail in there.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, it's a detail that maybe you want in because you're super emotionally attached to it, or because it's something that you need the reader to know for 3 chapters later, which I totally love backloading before action sequences.
Yes.
But you have to find an organic, natural way for it to fit in.
Yes.
You can't just
like,
tell.
Well, sometimes it can, as long as it like comes back later. I'm very forgiving about things like that where it's like, well, that sticks out like a sore thumb. Okay. And then like 3 chapters later, I'm like, oh, that's why it was there. It's like a little mini shock value. So I'm actually kind of okay with stuff like that as long as it doesn't happen all the time and get lost in the mix.
I wouldn't crucify a writer for it, but I'd crucify my own writing for it.
How funny is that? It's true. We're so like,
definitely be forgiving if I was reading a book and that happened. I'd be like, oh, they wanted me to know this for this reveal now. Okay, cool. My own writing, I'm like, girl, you need to find a natural place for this. You need to up your game. This is not okay.
Right.
But I might have like an inner demon problem. I don't know.
Yeah, I think everybody's got that little inner demon. You just tell that bad boy to shush. Or, you know, when they have something good, you listen. Yeah, I get that.
So relevancy and details for your character reveal a lot about them. They help with the show versus tell. So let's break into details for world building. I know Poppy's really excited about that one.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I like my characters. But yes, the world is also very important. They can't just walk around in a fuzzy, foggy cloud.
I also need to clarify, I am also a character fan. She makes it sound like I'm only world building.
Oh, no. I
am
not.
Hugely character-based.
But you're also fantasy as well, and that gives you this, I need to tell you all the details about this amazing world with the purple grass.
Well,
maybe not purple grass,
purple
but nonetheless.
Grass would be fantastic, and it's really long, and it sways in the direction you move because it watches you as you go by. Totally understand. So,
That was a fantastic off-the-cuff example. Thank you. Thank you for falling into that. That makes me feel much better.
Okay, so world building. So details with world building. This is where it gets really sticky with the what is too much versus what is not enough.
Genre. It's all about genre on that one.
It is about genre. And I think you can go too light and too heavy even on your genre. So if you're looking at fantasy and you're like, oh, I can just gob on every detail possible, you really can't.
Yeah.
You really
Spread it
can't.
around or just simmer down.
You can give beautiful prose and you can reveal the world through details in the setting, but just like with character building, they need to be relevant.
Yeah.
They need to be relevant to what's affecting the character that's in that setting. They need to be relevant. So a lot of times, especially with fantasy, you're going to have a setting that can kind of be like a character itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the setting, the magic system, a lot of these things that we play with are reactive and they're causing and doing things without a person causing things. And so there's some great details that reveal this kind of stuff, and it's really exciting and it's super easy to just fall into. I can't say that there's like a formula or a perfect method or what's too much and what's not enough, and that's basically going to come down to your beta readers. But I will say don't fall into the trap of, oh, I'm a fantasy writer, so I can do as much world building and setting as I want. And I also don't think you should be like, oh, I'm a romance writer, I don't have to do any setting and world building.
Yeah.
I think both of these writers are going to potentially miss the mark.
Yeah.
So you romance writers out there, I need some setting and world building as a romance reader.
Yes.
I need it with horror. I need it with fantasy. I need it. So sci-fi, I feel like, is a lot like fantasy as well.
Yes.
Gobs and gobs of it, but where's the line where it's too much?
Right. And I think that depends on what you're
niche.
going for as an author. Exactly.
There's
niche.
also niches within genres. So just because
Absolutely.
you're fantasy or just because you're sci-fi doesn't mean all rules are the same within there. There's going to be niche genres within these big things.
If you want to wax
different
yes.
expectations.
God, if you want to wax poetic about like every control ever on the ship and how the ship is built and what materials are used, there are people who are going to eat that up. I am not that person, but there are a lot of people who are, and they are going to want every detail. They're going to want you to map it out and draw it, and they're going to want diagrams, and they're going to hear about every function it has ever, and then it's a story about a ship. But that is awesome. If that is what you want to do, cool. Make sure it's within your genre and you found a niche for it.
So I want to do like a really good example here of someone who's great with world building. And we talk about what's too much versus what's not enough. I think a good control factor is how it affects your pacing. If the story stops,
gosh, yes,
in order to tell about the world building and the setting, that's a problem. If your story stops at any point to tell about any backstory, any memory, it has to further the story, the active artery, the main artery we've talked about with the story. It has to keep, that artery has to keep pumping versus everything. An author that I think is phenomenal with this in fantasy and world building is R.A. Salvatore. Mm-hmm. Salvatore?
Salvatore, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, Tor, not Door. There's T there. So my favorite series with his is the Dark Elf series with Driz. And it's phenomenal world building. It's all beneath the ground. It's in caves. It's a society that's basically spider shifters, matriarchal ruled, and it's every setting detail he gives is telling you about the world and these spider shifters and these new creatures and these women who rule with just badass in a bad way. They're just nasty. But as he goes in and tells you the setting details, he's explaining to you how the world works. And because of that, you get to see how this male character has to behave, how he has to handle things because of the world around him.
Oh, that's cool. It's like a nice little blend between character and world.
Yeah, it's like, okay, here's the world. Here's the setting. Here's this room, this cave that we're in. He has this whole sequence that's multiple chapters where it's just the male character trying to escape, and he's going through caves by himself. Wow. And him and his Black Panther for like multiple caves. He's got this Black Panther pet. It's just amazing.
It's awesome.
And so I am like a notorious short attention span person. I was gobbling up every single word. Everything he saw about these caves and what he was going through and doing made him think of things that he had to overcome, made him think of things that he was afraid of, made him think of how he had to press further and go faster, how he couldn't give up, what the consequences were if he gave up. The stakes were constantly reminded and laid out for me while they were mixed in with the setting and the world building.
Oh man, that's like a study right there. That is awesome.
It was
because that
beautiful.
is it. Because that is a real person and what you would do if you were walking through a brand new cave. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love it.
And this is where details are important because the details help me be in the scene with this character. I can hear the water dripping. I can feel the moistness in the air because he's underwater in these moist caves. And like I'm there with him. I can smell the things. And this is where we get into our 5 senses as well.
Which is so important in detailing in every single genre.
And I would like to argue that I think instead of just trying to hit all 5 senses, I personally feel that certain characters are more drawn to 1 or 2 of the 5 senses. And they tend to hit those on repeat more than others.
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm getting all of the 5 senses as checkpoints, I'm hearing from the author.
Yeah.
As where if I'm getting in every scene the character notices whatever sounds are happening, I'm hearing from the character.
Yes.
Because there's like a consistent thread there that's going on with that detail.
And it doesn't just break down with that. The cool part about the senses is that it's more than that. It's not like I smelled oranges. There's more to it than that. What is your character, if they are so inclined to pay attention to scents, is it because most of them are bad? Is it because there's certain things that they are aiming for? Is it because there's a nostalgic value? Because the olfactory sense is so incredibly tied to memory. What is it about all of these senses that are important? The clicking of a pen makes them want to scratch someone's eyes out. What are the important details?
If you're Poppy and you podcast,
oh yeah, it's totally me. I'm like, what's with the pen? Yeah, I know, right?
Fair. There's a really great thing, though, I think you said. So when there's a scent that triggers a memory, and
yes.
I really think it's important that when you have a detail that's triggering a memory, whatever memory it's triggering, the emotion in that memory should be relevant to the emotion in the scene.
Ooh.
Like it shouldn't just be backstory just because you triggered a backstory.
Sure.
Your backstory should have an emotion that the current scene is dealing with.
Oh.
And I think that's a way that adds to your scene and layers it and keeps your pacing moving forward because you're revealing why they're having this emotion so intensely.
Yes.
You understand them and relate with them more versus just loading in backstory.
I could see that. Yeah, because the loading in the backstory, it's really got to be relevant and really something that comes in and ties in to do so if you're going to dump it. Because a backstory or a flashback, I should say a flashback, is kind of a dump. It's kind of an info dump because it's like wait, let's pause everything and talk about what happened 10 years ago.
And now that you know that, we're moving forward. That was just a timeout.
Right. And so it really has to make sense and really has to be part of the story. And some people love flashbacks and some people hate them.
I think it's the emotions that...
I think it is too.
Is that bridge, though. Because I'm not a flashback person. But if that flashback is revealing, if you're talking about an X-Men origin story, that's revealing all their emotions and what's made them who they are to have these emotional reactions, I'm like, don't stop. Give me more.
If it's like Wolverine getting tortured, then yeah, I want to know about that.
I want to see when he kills them all for it. Yes.
Right? And I want to be there cheering because like, yep, they deserve that because you wouldn't have known that without it. But it does have to be important. It does have to have an emotional tie. I agree. And those are like emotional details too. Gosh, there's just detailing everything and how you would need to address it and what means the most to your character and to other characters as well. How are your other characters going to handle it? They can't all act exactly the same. They can't all know that, or they can't all be tied to olfactory sense. They can't, everyone has different
things. Yeah,
exactly.
They have to have different triggers.
Yes.
So I had another example too. I kind of went overboard with examples.
Your examples, that's good examples. Go for it.
And we're still talking about world building stuff. So I had obviously a magic example because hello, it's me.
Magic. Yes.
So Sean and McGuire just got the Toby Day series. They're super popular. They're super good. They're super fun. So we talked earlier about. And I'm going to use the same principle we talked about with Laurel K. Hamilton, how she took clothing is a staple when you're doing a romance. Like you want to know what your characters are wearing. And she took this staple and she put a unique twist on it. And so I really wanted to bring up the Toby Day series because she takes a magic system that is a kind of a staple magic system. But how she triggers the magic system is by rhymes. So you could use Dr. Seuss, The Cat in the Hat as a rhyme. As long as you're telling the magic what to do in that rhyme, it functions.
That's awesome.
But her character, for her detail, always uses Shakespeare quotes in order to direct the magic. So she's taken a magic system, but she's added like this really fun detail that she's consistent with. And consistency is really important.
Gosh, that's key.
And world building and characters and magic and setting and anything you're doing with your details, be consistent. If your character has a trigger to something, that trigger should always trigger them.
Yes, absolutely.
Not just that one scene where it did something for you. And so same thing with her magic. She's very consistent, and it gets really fun as the series progresses because you get to see which Shakespeare plays she pulls from most. You get to understand what her more favorite ones are and lesser known ones are. And I mean, obviously, I don't love Shakespeare at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
Lies.
So it was really fun for me, and I felt like I was getting to know her, and I felt connected to her in the fact that that's what she was picking for her writing methods, and I found it fascinating which Shakespeare plays she was using. And so just because, and that goes back to, again, understanding your genre and your demographic, what their expectations are, doesn't mean that you completely avoid it. It's like, let's use this, and we always talk about with tropes and everything else, you need a unique spin on it. You need to flip it upside down. That's a lot of pressure. So hold back for a second. What if you just put a new detail?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it as just a little speck of a detail. Let's put a freaking lace cuff shirt on it.
Right?
It could be that simple, guys. Details are that powerful.
And it stands out so very much in a good way. And it showed so much about the world and about the character and about the other characters. Because that's the important part, too. It's not all about... Your character's not like every other character in your book. They're all going to have different things that trigger them and different things that mean something to them and that matter to them. And how they react to stuff as well. And so, yeah, I just love those because you're building a real world. Obviously, you need the whole world experience, not just a teeny little piece of it.
It's like a whole story or something.
Right?
What? The last thing we had to talk to you guys about with details was about how they are a tool to break out of the vague syndrome.
Oh my gosh, the vague syndrome. Whew, that's so easy to fall into as a writer.
Wait, what is the vague syndrome, Poppy?
Well, the vague syndrome is where you basically are like, well, you know, that thingamabob over there that is just so important to me. Okay, I'm going to go this direction now. It's like, okay, wait, come back. Because as a writer, you have in your head exactly what that thingamabob is. But
and I
your
will say
reader
a lot
doesn't.
of times that thingamabob, you're probably dealing with like a theme or a deeper message you're trying to get at. You're not going to catch it in your first couple drafts. I'm sorry. You're just because you're going to know in your head exactly what you mean. And so that vagueness is crystal clear to you. And I find my vagueness after I've let something sit in the drawer for, the digital drawer for...
Yes, the digital drawer.
At least a month. 1 to 3 months, I let it sit.
Let it rest and then go back and look at it again and be like, oh, what was I trying to say here? No matter what, there's sometimes still moments I have where I'm like, oh, I don't know what I was saying. Oops.
And I find whenever I'm being vague, because there's some bigger message, and I'm trying to be so la-di-da-da, la-di-da-da,
secretive and sneaky and
for like
mysterious.
I don't know, like on a soapbox preaching to you about some moral high point that I have.
Without saying it, obviously.
Right? I found that... 1, I need to get off my soapbox more often than not. And 2, the best way to break this vagueness and to help the reader and even me understand what I was trying to say 3 months ago is details.
Yes.
Instead of being, I don't know, what's like a really vague. And she understood that the meaning of true friendship was symbolized in this moment. Okay,
right.
So this is really vague because we know nothing that's happening in this moment. We don't know what the action was that did that or why that action was important. So if you have to like stop and break down and be like, well, what actually is triggering them to feel friendship? What does friendship mean to them? Like, let's get specific. Well, when they gave me the last brownie, even though brownies are the only thing they can eat and live off of in the entire world. I was like, holy crap, someone is willing to put their nutrition well-being above my own. I mean...
That is pretty darn incredible. That's right. And I'm a little jealous of your brownie eating diet. It's fine.
I don't know. That's what came to mind.
It was great. And now I want brownies, so thanks for that. Appreciate it.
But it's much better to get specific in the moment and let the reader draw the bigger moral message on their own.
Yes.
You get specific in your details for the moment. And you know what the beauty in all of it is that a lot of times they draw an entirely different, bigger message from it.
Don't you just love when that happens?
Beta readers who are like, oh, are you totally trying to say this with this? And I'm like, oh.
That sounds way better than what I was going to do.
Wow. Yeah. Totally.
Obviously, that's exactly what I was aiming for.
That's what brownies mean.
Pat myself on the back.
Hello. Yeah. Everyone knows that.
That is great. But that does not, just because people are interpreting it differently doesn't mean that you were being like mysterious and vague in a good way. Like it means that what you're putting out there, you weren't telling it, but you were giving it to them in the way that the character acts. They weren't being like, oh, I learned my moral of the story. It's this right here. And it's like, no, wait. Like you should be able to just show that through actions and through the details that have happened and their emotional details and the details of the characters around them and what they're thinking and feeling too. No one's going to stop and point and be like, you learned your lesson, didn't you? And it was this. And the characters will be like, oh my God, it was. You're totally right.
Now
that is not
brownie.
Life. That's not life. That's not what we do. Not usually. But
and it's not a bad thing if a reader gets a different theme or message from your book. Unless like they're getting the message that Nazis need to come back, then I'm going to retract that entirely. Yeah. But a lot of times everyone comes from different walks of life and need different things and will pull different things out of a story. The things that they need, the things that uplift them, that means hope to them and encouragement to them. And it's what they need to hear. And so you being specific in the details in the moment, exactly what's happening, gives them the freedom to find the theme and the message that they need.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Or I'm just totally making this up. That happens too.
And it also depends on your genre and how detailed you need to go. And for some things, like if you're in middle grade, you're going to probably need to tell them exactly the moral of the story. And then they're going to be like, oh, okay, so now I see what the moral of the story was. And now I'm looking back on all those actions that happened and I get it because they're learning to read and they're learning to comprehend and critical think and all that stuff. But as an adult with adult fiction, you're going to want to be a little bit more sneaky about delivery, and you're going to want to show in the details and the emotions and everything that's happened in their new developments, where it's not like, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, because readers know they are intelligent people who are reading your work. They're not going to be like, I don't get it, unless you're incredibly too vague.
And I like that. I always think in adult terms because I write exclusively adult, but whether it's middle grade or young adult or whatever it is, how you reveal that theme or the message, it's going to vary. Those genre expectations matter, guys. They
really do. They're so important to know what your book falls into and what a reader is looking for, because how in the world can you find your readers without knowing what your genre is? You can't. It's just throwing a dart at half a mile and being like, here, hit something. It just, that doesn't work. Unfortunately, it just does not.
I agree.
But your details help.
Details help. Details help you show versus tell. They help reveal characters. They help explore beautiful sceneries and magic systems. Play with your five senses. Use them as a tool to break being vague and speaking in thematic tones. Because as smart and cool as you think you are, give it 3 months, then see how you feel.
Yeah.
Relevant details matter, and we have a challenge for you.
Ooh, what's your challenge today, Cass?
Our challenge today is useless details.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Okay, so hear me out. We all have these useless details that we are super emotionally attached to, and I know you want them in there. They do nothing for your scene. They reveal nothing about your character. They do nothing for it. They stall out your story, but you love them so much. So we're going to help you out here. Take them out of your work in progress and give them to us. Give us that worthless detail that you are so attached to. We'll take it on. We'll praise you. We'll love you for it. And then carry on with your story.
Yep.
Do you have any useless details?
I do. I have car rides between scenes because I feel if they're going from one location to another, they clearly have to go in a car and you have to know that they're in a car. And it's just driving the car to the next scene. Yep, just in the car. And it is totally unnecessary and I just can't stop. So I'm going to give that to you. I'm not going to do any more in-between scene car rides.
All right.
That's dumb. So
Done. I will take your car rides.
Thank you.
And I raise you hair fidgeting.
Hair fidgeting.
I predominantly have female protagonists, and they are always swiping their hair, pulling their hair back, doing different things with their hair.
It's very important.
It's not really revealing anything besides the fact that they have hair.
Hair is the thing. So
I'm giving you the fidgety hair.
I like it. I will take it. I will take it.
Take your car ride.
I feel like I need to put more hair in buns or something. I'm going to work on that.
I do not feel like I need more car rides. I don't even know what I would do with a car ride.
Exactly. Squeak the steering wheel with the leather because there's possibly some tension, but it really doesn't matter because they're in a car.
Awkwardness is kind of delicious.
So awkward. It's just awkward to be awkward. I gotta stop. That's a problem.
So give us your useless details. We will take them on and love them for you.
Great.
In the meantime, keep punching the keys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And if you liked this episode, please subscribe and give us that clickable 5-star love.
Got writer questions or feedback? Reach out through our website. And until next time, make sure to punch the keys.